everybody for joining the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines, and today we have guest Vanessa Mares on with us, coming in from Spain. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Robert?
Good. Well, I want to thank you for the invitation. We've only known each other very briefly, but I wanted to tell you why. I saw your channel. It popped up on my YouTube feed. I was immediately impressed with it. It was a topic that's really hard to sell, which is, independent thinking and critical thinking. And you presented it so well. And I was just wowed by it. I thought, I've got to get her on the channel before she's too big to come on. So thank you for uh, coming on the show. And I do have some questions. Obviously, your channel description says our minds are captured. Let's break down the influence behind news, politics, and culture. If you don't mind, give me like a 30-second elevator pitch on why critical thinking is so important and how that would enhance someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think right now we're just living at such an unusual inflammatory time. And I think that right now more than ever, critical thinking, independent thinking, because as we've seen in our country, people are, you know, left or right, and there's just culture wars over so many things. And yeah, and for me, it just that's what I want to promote is critical thinking, independent thinking, and being aware of our biases. We all have a bias, but really kind of fighting that I guess human desire to be tribal.
Absolutely. I think the toughest part about that is a lot of the biggest voices in media, both from X to YouTube, they're very steeped in one camp or the other. And
It's true.
unfortunately, I've always been for a very long time, I would say since about 2002, I've been able to irritate both people. I could have somebody on the far left and the far right, and in one conversation, I could upset them both. And so that was another reason why your channel was a breath of fresh air because you weren't imposing your opinion. You were saying, look, here is this analysis. And I thought, oh wow, this is great. And the way that you presented it, I think is very effective as well. I just
Thank
noticed
you.
too, you're very welcome, Vanessa. Do you have vidIQ? Do you use that as a tool for your channel at all?
I do have that. Yeah.
The reason why I bring that up, because this would be weird to mention what I'm about to mention if you
Okay.
weren't familiar with it. So when I initially looked at your channel, I didn't use vidIQ because you can analyze other people's channel with vidIQ, but in preparation for
Right.
this interview, I did. And what's funny is when I saw your channel, two things came to mind immediately. I thought, Vanessa's going places. I've been involved with artists most of my career, musicians and visual artists. So part of my thing was to try to see talent very quickly and figure out who was going to be the next big thing. And so I got that. I thought she's really great at the presentation, but the topic is tough. So if she
Oh,
can if she
okay.
can push that because I'm a business podcaster channel. I mean, there are people that are doing try on hauls that one video has more than all of my input together over a year and a half, and that's a little demoralizing. But those were my two immediate thoughts. Great presentation, a hard subject to convey because most people want to be pulled to the left or pulled to the right or reassured of their beliefs. But anyway, the point about vidIQ is when I contacted you, which was Friday the 16th, I think that day, according to vidIQ, you gained 5 subscribers. By the 18th, you had another 75 subscribers. On the 19th, you gained 501 subscribers in one day. And you
Yeah.
had two breakout video. Congratulations on that. By that is,
Thank
people have
you.
no idea that's amazing.
I was shocked. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think some of the success, and of course, you can tell me better than I can guess, but you had two breakout videos that performed very well back to back. Do you think both of them had a common denominator that made them popular, or do you think they're popular for different reasons?
Um, Gosh, I mean, I don't know. I know that they were, first of all, they were really hot topics, right? So with everything happening right now, with what happened unfortunately with Renee Good in Minnesota, the topic of immigration and ICE and all of that came up. And So I made those two videos on that topic, but I was really trying to bring in my lens in terms of like the analysis of specific things that I was talking about. So I don't actually know. I was kind of shocked and surprised that they did that well.
And the comments were great because when you're
Yeah,
being objective, which you are, it's very hard to get hate too at the same time because you're not cheerleading for one side or the other. You're
right.
just this voice of reason. So the comments, I thought that was great. I thought the comment section was they were wonderful people. So you're building,
Yeah,
quite a coalition, which is what you want. That's the ultimate thing as
right,
a YouTuber. Who cares about 100,000 subscribers that are just going to go on to the next Jake Paul? If you've
right.
got people, I think it comes down to we're all just looking for our tribe. We're all unusual in our own way. And if
It's
we
so
can
true.
just find those people that share some feelings. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
So how did you feel when you suddenly woke up and saw the numbers just exploding on your channel?
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I was, again, I was shocked. I had been reading some of the comments as they were coming through. And then, I think I woke up one day and there was like a ton more comments. And I was like, I don't think I can read all of these, but I did. I kept going throughout the day and reading and seeing what people were saying. And a lot of people had really nice things to say, which was really great. And honestly, it just kind of, to me, to what you were talking about, it speaks to the fact that I think people that yes, while the algorithms favor kind of the extremities, I think there's a lot of people that kind of have a hunger for some nuance, that have a hunger for some kind of like, the people in the middle. I think those are the forgotten people, and I just think that yeah, that was kind of what I took away from that. I realized, wow, I think a lot of people are actually hungry for this.
You stole my follow-up question.
Oh,
No, that's great. It's brilliant because in preparation for this, the word that kept coming up over and over again was nuance because there's no room for it's as far as if you want to go viral. And
yes.
vidIQ will tell you, the people from that I'm associated with at Podmatch will tell you, even YouTube has its own, creator corner, and all of them are anti-nuance.
Yeah,
I
right.
do think you have the benefit of talking about current topics, which are always going to help because it's what people are currently searching for. But
Right.
being that lone voice in the wilderness, I'm just happy that there's also an audience for your content as much as you are, because that gives me hope, because a lot of times the comment
Yeah.
sections, the videos, the stuff that I'm seeing, and I just recently deleted Facebook because I have to be honest, I I couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. Even the stuff I agreed with, I was getting too much of that. I know that sounds strange, but I was like, you
Oh,
know,
it's true. Sometimes I've noticed it before too. Sorry to
no, go
to
ahead.
to cut you off, but just to add to that, sometimes I'll notice when I even feel that my algorithm is trying to push me further in a certain direction. I could just tell by the content that it's feeding me.
Well, you may know this already because you're in the space. You're in marketing. You've got experience as a copywriter and a screenwriter, and hopefully we can get into a little bit of that as well. But you'll hit a certain point because I'll tell you when because you and I have something in common. My channel just recently had a bunch of growth. I was at 200 subscribers for a year and a half. I was doing
Okay.
interviews, and then all of a sudden now I'm at 3,660, but who's counting?
Amazing.
But
Congratulations.
there's a reason why,
That's
and
so
I
good.
did some stuff, and
Okay.
anyway, so I got under the hood and did some things. So
Right.
it didn't happen. It didn't happen organically, that's for sure. I know I
Right.
didn't buy views. I didn't do that. I mean, I sort of did, but anyway, that's another
Gosh, I didn't
video for
even know
another
that you
time.
could do that. I didn't know
Well,
that was a thing.
yeah, there's services to do that,
Okay.
but I don't want to spoil it because I have a whole other episode that I'm in the process of filming to explain that. But essentially, without
Okay.
giving too much away, I ran an ad um, on my most popular video, and
Okay.
then I watched it because here was the thing. We need data to make determinations. And you and I live in that world where if we
Right.
want to know if marketing is performing, it has to convert, it has to, what is the KPIs and all that. So
Right.
my channel having such low views for so long, I didn't know what to tweak because I didn't have enough data. So when I
Right.
ran an ad on the most popular one, it started to elevate the data on some of the other videos. Now I can make changes. Then I started fooling with the thumbnails and the descriptions, and because I could see the
Nice.
needle moving. So I had to, unfortunately, I had to spend some money, but really in the greater
Yeah.
scheme of things, it wasn't that much money. But obviously you did it the right way. You did it organically. You hit something. So I think that is really fantastic. Now, here's the big question. What are your long-term goals for your channel?
Gosh, I knew that I wanted to find my people. That was really I was like, I know those people are out there. There's people that want to not react to everything in a big emotional way. They don't want to be tribal. They actually want information. They want clarity. And so a big part of it for me was like, I want to find those people. I want to talk to those people. And I also want, people that are just curious and I want to be able to teach them, uh, teach them from what I know and from kind of what my experience is and my knowledge and my education. And yeah, I mean, from there, I just figured, gosh, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I know that I want to grow. And yeah, I wouldn't say that I have it mapped out completely, but yeah.
Well, for the people that do check out your channel, they're going to notice that your presentation style is very smooth. Where does that come
Thank
from?
you.
Is it a lot of experience public speaking? Do you do a lot of prep beforehand? How does it, because the delivery is very, very smooth.
Oh, thank you. I want to say that maybe it comes from years ago when I was younger and I was into acting. That was actually my first introduction into kind of this whole world of creativity was in acting. So I spent a lot of time in my early years doing a lot of acting classes and all that kind of stuff. And that really kind of helped me, I think, learn how to communicate. And me being actually a shy person, it brought me out and it really kind of showed me how to communicate in that way. And I guess that must be where it comes from.
And as far as your scripting, is there a teleprompter involved? Is there just a lot of prep? You have your notes because again, to be that smooth, I would find it hard to memorize that much of a script.
Yeah.
I can memorize a paragraph at a time and then I have to edit. I have to cut myself back in. But is there any tips for any other YouTubers so that they can have that professional look like you do?
Yeah, well, honestly, I've done both. Some of my earlier videos were teleprompter. I was scripting, I was editing, I was spending time with, and then I would run it through, once or twice before filming it. And then I would go for it. And then these recent videos that actually, these very recent ones that brought me all of those subscribers, I had a general outline, but I wasn't working with a teleprompter. I was just kind of riffing.
Okay. Wow. That's even more
Yeah.
impressive that you could riff and get that many views. One thing that I was thinking about when I was looking at your LinkedIn, I'm not going to say that your YouTube presence and your kind of your call to action or your presence on LinkedIn, I'm not going to say they're completely separated, but a lot of people use a YouTube channel to kind of move people towards their call to action. But yours are
Mhm.
far enough apart. Are you going to are you going to make any changes on LinkedIn? Or are you going to make any changes on YouTube? In other words, are you going to kind of bring people around to, hey, you're connecting with this because of my skills as a cop? Because obviously, being effective on camera is rooted in good writing. And I've said many times on social media, writing is the only skill that I know of that if you improve it, it improves every aspect of your life because when you text your mom, you're writing. When you
Yeah.
do your resume and your you're writing. When you're putting the post you hope goes viral, that's writing. So
Yes, I
is
agree
there a
completely.
connection between the services that you want to offer and your channel?
Yeah, I think, definitely. I have in my mind that I want to kind of make this a lot more cohesive at some point. And I was just kind of giving myself the grace of like, okay, like let's take one thing at a time. Let's see what it feels like to create content. Let's see what how I do with this task that I gave myself. But ultimately, yes, I want my LinkedIn to sort of be more linked up. I'm also quietly building a presence on Substack.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I have, a vision for these things all being interconnected at some point. But yeah, again, I was just giving myself the grace of like, okay, just do one thing at a time and, learn that thing and move through it that way.
Sure, sure. I feel like the guy, going up to a freshman, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's not that at all, but you are
No,
you
that's
are
okay.
very early in your journey, and
Yeah.
and I think that's great that you're getting this feedback and this data because it's going to inform your future content so much better. It did mine. Like I said, we did them
Yeah.
slightly different ways, but yeah, I'm really not the kind of person that wants to give people what they want. I want to do what I want to do, and my channel is very general. I don't have a niche. I resist that. I know I pay a price for that in
Right.
popularity, but I'm willing. For me, freedom has always been the most important thing, and I've given up a lot of good jobs and good opportunities at the risk of losing some freedom. So yeah, I'd rather have that. And thankfully, you don't have a producer telling you, "Hey, Vanessa, we can't talk about that," because there are newscasters out there that get these big scoops, and then they're told by Roger Ailes or whoever, you can't talk
That's
about that.
true.
So enjoy your freedom.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of freedom, yeah, that I love having that as well. That was my thing. Like I want to do this on my terms and um yeah, I mean, see how it goes, but for sure, I get that. Freedom is really important.
Well, do you think there are, and I think of the book by Noam Chomsky. I'm only just going to steal the title, but he wrote a book called Necessary Illusions. And I think that society is held together, I think, in some ways by some necessary illusions. I don't like them. I'm the type of person, just tell me the truth. I want to know how it really works. It's okay. Like I can handle it. I don't
Right.
want to be told a story. I don't like when Chat GPT gives me, oh, I think that's a great idea, Robert. No, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to know what's really going on. So, when I was that last generation that was told, go to college and things will be fine. Well, no, that broke down right about when it was when I was going to college. And a matter of fact,
Right.
I'm a business management graduate of the University of Louisville. A year or two after I graduated, which I went back in my 30s, but they actually dropped that program a year or two after I graduated because they couldn't
Oh,
place their
wow.
graduates. But they had been
Wow.
taking money for decades for a program that. But so
Right.
anyway, that whole necessary illusion broke down. And
Right.
but if we were really told the truth, like on YouTube, if in most situations, I think if people were told up front how much work or money it takes to get whatever it is you want in life, I don't think people would run for it. That's why there's this popularity of the message like, do this one treat,
Mhm.
or you can
Yeah.
lose weight and eat pizza. So how do you balance? And here's the question. I am getting around to a
Yeah.
question.
No,
How
that's
can you
okay.
stay motivated and know the truth at the same time? Because I mean, I still am able to maintain, but it's not easy. How do you deal with that with not having to be pleasantly drawn in by these necessary illusions, stay motivated, and yet still be exposed to the truth of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess by that you mean also to not be discouraged, maybe
That's
by
right.
some of those truths. Yeah.
That's right.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, everyone is different and everyone's going to handle it differently. And I always think it starts with knowing yourself, and kind of knowing your own capacity and working with yourself and how you hold information. But I don't know, it's there's a level of acceptance. I know that for me personally, and this is what I hope my viewers will also feel and desire is like awareness. I want to at least be aware of what's happening and I want to be able to read it and I want to be able to kind of pick it apart and say like, oh, okay, I see what they did there. I get that. But it doesn't mean that it's all necessarily deceptive or bad or malicious. Sometimes it just is. And I think, yeah, I think just kind of having that practice of being able to hold space for all of it. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's well, of course, I think the best description I've ever heard was something called the Stockdale paradox. And it could be its own, it definitely could be its own episode. But anyway, Admiral Stockdale, who ran for vice president with let's see, with Ron, I think he was Ross Perot or Ron Paul. Sorry. Anyway, he was a vice
Okay.
presidential candidate. And the thing is, he was a POW. And they always go to him, and because the thing that he said that was very unpopular but got a lot of attention, he was a POW for a long time, and a lot of the people didn't survive where he was at, and he survived. And they said, "How
Mm.
did you do it?" He said, "Well, I wasn't an optimist." And he said the optimists were the first to go because they thought we'll be out by Christmas, and then Christmas would come and go, and they weren't free and they couldn't handle it, and they passed on. And he said to be a realist and know that you still have to endure and get through it and that there's going to be an end at some point. He said, if you can embrace the reality of the situation and have a long-term vision of how to get through it, he said, that's how you survive. And so he had this really tough mentality. And the Stockdale paradox was talked a lot more 10 or 20 years ago when he was, still out and talking. So I think sometimes embracing the harsh reality and realizing that you do have this stone in front of you, but every day you can chip away at it. Like those films where the person breaks out of prison and they've been chipping chipping away at
Yeah,
this wall for 20 years. And I think there's a lot to do. Life is a lot like that where you're slowly chipping away. So speaking of
I
chipping away,
agree.
you're doing a lot of different topics. Is there a singular message you want your audience to get from your channel in general?
Um, I think, gosh, I think it's a little bit of also just what you were talking about, which is if I want them to get a message, it's just to understand and but to actually learn a little bit about themselves too. Um, because, you know, I think that's where it starts. And um, if you're able to entertain two ideas and not feel compelled to accept one, what is that quote? I'm trying to remember, but um, yeah, I think, just being kind of promoting that critical thinking. And I think, ultimately, yes, I'm touching on various topics. And, my goal is to kind of give people the tools of a different way of looking at something and really ultimately just raising awareness. It's kind of like that speaking in film language a little bit like when you break the fourth wall and it's like let's learn how to analyze also the way the stories are being constructed versus just the story themselves. But yeah, sorry, I think I veered off from your question a little bit.
No, that's great. It
Good.
does remind me of one of your videos where you talked about the language that media uses, let's say when they don't like somebody. Like let's go back to something that's not as politically sensitive. Let me go back in time because that does soften it a little bit. But when
Right.
the religious people that followed David Koresh in Waco, they called where he lived a compound and they called
Okay.
his organization a cult. So when the
Right.
media uses those words, you can tell very quickly what side they're on. So I
Right.
also too, because my background, I'm an investigator, so the use of language is very important. I would have people on a recorded statement and have them tell me their version of what happened, and people that are guilty, you, you use very, it's so funny because they almost all say the same. They don't realize there's kind of this mode that they use. But yeah, you can pick
Yeah.
away at that logic pretty quick, but people just use certain language. And I feel like I know that I'm trying to be massaged by the message in a certain way if the characters in a story are being described in a particular way. And I think you
Right.
did a really great job. Can you just
Thank
recap
you.
that briefly for us? I mean, of course, we want them to go to the channel and watch it, but I think that was a brilliant
Yeah. Are you
explanation.
talking about the a specific video that I did or
Yes,
just
I think you were talking about how people get demonized by the language that the media uses when they tell a story. Like if the that media channel is against a particular character, they'll use certain phrases, even though it
Right.
seems on the surface that this is just an independent report about what happened. But now they're
Yeah.
really turning the dial. But most people might not realize the dial is being turned.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, this is where I think my background in creative writing, but also just copywriting comes in because I've spent much of my life obsessed with words. So, and I take them seriously and I do think they're powerful. And if you can kind of have the tools to be able to analyze just the words being used, aside from even the visuals, because there's even visual language, right? Even the visual language that you get can tell you a bias or just can tell you, what they're trying to convey it in a certain way. And yeah, ultimately, there are words that can kind of easily, just as you just described, compound or occult, but even softer, but you can kind of see what their agenda is with those words or and yeah, and that's how you would be able to sort of like pick it apart, and that's kind of some of the content that I try to do and point out and sort of teach.
I wonder when people watch your channel, what are they going to see over the course of the next couple of months? Do you have ideas way ahead of time? Are you going to kind of lean into whatever's, the current hot topics? What are you thinking now that you've got eyes on the channel and I think that's great. I just hope, obviously that it keeps rolling. But how are you planning
Yeah.
the next 30 days for the channel, let's say, for instance?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, definitely I want to stay tapped into what's happening, what people are talking about. Partly as a growth strategy, but also because there's usually something to say almost about everything. There's so much material, but I do have also topics and things that I want to get into further. That is, stuff that's happened maybe even just in our recent history, within the last 10 years. There's so much material, and I want to dive into psychology. I want to dive into what's been going on with like social movements. Yeah, I have a lot of things that I want to pick apart, and these are things that I want to get into more. So hopefully I'll be able to bring those into the channel also.
Looking forward to that. I know
Yeah,
Americans have a
thank you.
very insular, I mean, it's a big country. So first of all, let me give them some grace. It's a massive country. So,
True.
but they're very not aware of what goes on outside of the borders. And the
Yes.
people whose minds that I know are most resistant to propaganda are people that have traveled. And although I got a little bit of a sense of that from your LinkedIn, I presume also you've traveled well because walking in other people's shoes, being in other cultures gives you this perspective where it makes it really hard for people to influence you. Does that make any sense?
Gosh, that makes so much sense. And you're speaking actually to one of my other kind of goals and missions with my work is exactly that. I do know that Americans tend to live in a bubble. I mean, America in and of itself is a bubble, but even other little bubbles. I was in California, and that Southern California, and that's its own bubble. And it's true that we don't frequently even think or notice a lot of things that are happening outside of the country. And so much of the media environment is through this domestic lens of what's happening in the country. When I started to travel, when I went to London, I lived there for 2 years, and now in Spain for about 4 years, or I think going on 5. Yes, I realized that wow, even I got a ton more perspective when I finally left the US, and I realized wow, there was a lot that I didn't even know, or just a way of viewing the world that I didn't have. And it ultimately, yes, it comes down to that one word, perspective. And that's a big one for me, for sure.
it creates a lot of empathy too, because I think politically, particularly when we're talking about wars, and I've lived long enough now. Unfortunately, I've seen us involved in a bunch of them, but
Yeah.
and I was in the army for 8 years, so
Oh,
and I
wow.
joined during time of war, so they kind of had me, they had my brain. I was
Yeah.
19, so
Right.
I
Yeah.
wasn't hard to influence. And then I realized, oh, these Afghanis, they just want their kids to go to the right school and marry the right per. They want wow, this is amazing, and the more I traveled,
Yeah.
the more I met. Because the first mistake the military did was they sent me to Germany. I didn't know the language, I didn't know, but I liked new things, and I immediately started studying German, and I would leave the army post as often as I could and spent time with German people. So,
Oh, that's cool.
so I got
Yeah.
this wow. And the strangest thing, and I thought about this in preparation for this video, is I was a guest at a German family's house, and they were watching some old black and white World War II movie that I had never seen before, and I've
Yeah.
saw a lot of them as a kid, and I started watching it, and it was all in German. It wasn't English dubbed into German, so I was like, okay, this was filmed over there, and in one scene, the American soldiers, which I realized in this version are the bad guys. And they're kicking in the door and they're harassing this innocent German family. And I was like, oh, wow. There are people here that
Wow.
look at that war completely. There are people that had bad experiences with American soldiers. And,
Right.
so
Right. Right.
there's multiple perspectives. And, I hate to bring up the classic Kurosawa film where, you see that scene played out through all the different characters that were involved. But there's multiple perspectives. It's so easy to
Yes.
say those people over there are the enemy.
Yes.
Oh, it's so easy.
Yes.
And people want to just suck that up because, oh yeah, I can eat pizza and I can lose weight. It's so easy. It's junk food for the mind.
Yeah.
But of course your
It's so
channel,
true. Sorry.
no, I was going to say your channel proves that that there is some appetite out for independent thought. And I think that is fantastic.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I was thinking too.
what do you think your screenwriting background connects, because this is also YouTube is also a visual medium. Are you thinking about like the three story structure and character development and things like that when it goes into writing
When it goes into like writing my scripts,
scripts? Yeah.
yeah. Actually, no. I remember being asked a similar question in when I was in London and I'd started my program. It was a master's program for creative writing and screenwriting and playwriting. And the professor asked, when you sit down and start writing, do you think about structure first or do you think about structure later? Or do you just not think about it at all? And I remember my answer was, wow, I just don't think about it at all until maybe later. But, certainly now I wouldn't say that that means maybe just from filling my brain up with movies and books and things, maybe I intuitively have an idea of how to sort of carry it through. But yeah, that's the only thing I'm relying on at the moment.
Well,
So
good writers are rabid readers, so I assume you're probably a
yes,
pretty voracious reader. Now,
yeah.
before we had talked on LinkedIn about the use of emotion in writing and how critical that is to both, well, how it's kind of used by the media or used on social media or in a social setting, and its use in marketing. Can you tie all of that together? So emotional messaging inside of what we're doing possibly as a social promotion of a social aspect of it and the same type of messaging used for marketing.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one because this is one that I've been seeing. I'm seeing the overlap completely between marketing just for like products and services, which is, this is what I do as a copywriter. But I see those same sort of techniques and strategy used over here on like the political side or the social movements and things like that. And I can't not see it. And I think that's why I talk about it sometimes. And I think I've done some videos on it and I'll probably do more. But it is true, ultimately what you're doing when you're, for instance, marketing a product, you're getting down to these really base level primal
Mhm.
desires that we all have, fears that we have, you know, wanting to be accepted, belonging, all of these things that we infuse into our copy really to make an impact, and to obviously create a conversion when we're using it in copywriting to sell a product. But this then transfers into social influence and into our culture. And now, for me, I can't see a difference in a way. I mean, the line is so blurred between all of these things. And yeah, this has been, part of the thing that I wanted to talk about on my channel was, being able to see how, once you understand what copy is supposed to do in marketing, now you can see it, how it works and is working in other places.
You start
Speaking
to
of
see
that,
this.
and
You, s-
yeah,
it's you start to realize you're in a puppet show, and you start to see the strings. And when you see the strings,
yeah,
you can't unsee them. Years and years ago, I
it's
was
true.
involved with a roofing company, and so I was on hundreds and hundreds of roofs. I still to this day notice bad roofs. I'll notice a piece missing and now as a YouTuber, I watch other people's YouTube channel and I'm like, their intro is too long. The audience is going to drop, so once you
Right.
know, you can't unknow. And the more you
Yeah.
know, the more strings you see. And you're absolutely right. The principles of marketing, the principles of propaganda, they're exactly the same. And
Right.
what's effective in propaganda is the same thing that's effective in marketing. And marketing is really just propaganda for a company. If you want to sell a
Right.
war, you got to sell the bad, so you're back in that screenwriter, they're horrible. And we have to usually if we were going to bomb somebody, we have to dehumanize them because we can't
Right.
think that if we can remove the thought that they don't love their kids, then it's over,
Right.
but
Right.
every
Exactly.
culture loves their kids. Everybody thinks their baby's the most beautiful baby in the world.
It's
That's,
true.
everywhere I've ever been, they think their kid is the kid. That's one thing all humans share. Well, thank you so much. I want to be respectful for your time, Vanessa. Now, your YouTube channel is Vanessa Mares. Just are you planning to
I
put a different show name down, or
I don't know yet. So yeah, I'm
you
not
still
sure
have
yet,
time to
but
figure all of that out?
I've
Yeah.
got yeah, I've got some time. I'm trying to figure out the branding of it all, but as I said, I wanted to give myself grace to go, okay, step by step. So we'll see. I think that, it'll come together, and it's starting to come together even more now, which is exciting.
Yeah, a lot of fast, rapid growth. Did I leave
Yeah.
anything out? Anything that you wanted to cover before we go?
No, I think that was really great. I really enjoyed that, Robert. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll end the stream, but we'll continue on Zoom.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. I have to look at three things at one time, and I'm the world's worst multitasker. So thank you.